Desi Arnaz stood under the studio lights with a polite smile that arrived half a beat too late. The audience laughed, loud enough to sound friendly, long enough to feel wrong. He assumed the laugh belonged to the line. It didn't. A man in the front row leaned back like he had been promised this moment. Another man laughed, then stopped when he realized he was laughing alone. Desi felt the silence that followed before he understood why. Silence in a studio usually meant a cue. This silence meant a decision. A thin folder rested on the edge of the table beside him. He hadn't put it there. It sat angled toward the front row, like it wanted witnesses. Desi reached for it, then stopped. Not fear, instinct. Because stopping was sometimes safer than touching. The room noticed him noticing it, and everyone understood this would end one of two ways. Legend, or a public collapse that would never be corrected. Los Angeles, 1953. Television was becoming power, and power was becoming quiet. Studios didn't threaten people. They scheduled them out of existence. This city wasn't governed. It was owned. The buildings remembered who could be removed without a scene. Contracts mattered more than applause. Meetings mattered more than talent. And rooms like this decided who stayed visible and who disappeared politely. In old Hollywood, humiliation rarely looked like punishment. It looked like laughter that came from the wrong place. And once the room laughed, the rumor was already born. The dangerous part wasn't the laugh itself. It was that everyone heard it the same way, and no one would admit they did. Desi learned early that danger rarely arrived loudly. In Havana, authority wore clean clothes and spoke softly. He learned to watch hands instead of faces. To notice who stopped smiling first. To notice who kept smiling too long. He learned to wait before responding, because the first response was usually the one they wanted. He learned that a room can be a weapon without anyone lifting a hand. That habit protected him for years. Tonight, it delayed him by seconds. Seconds that mattered. The first warning didn't arrive as a threat. It arrived as a note clipped to his rehearsal pages. Brief review after the run-through. No signature. No explanation. A stagehand asked if he was attending. Desi said, "Not tonight." The stagehand didn't argue. He glanced toward the audience seats, as if checking who had heard, then walked away. The refusal wasn't brave. It was logged. During rehearsal, a new line appeared on the cue cards. It sounded harmless. The laugh it received felt practiced. Desi laughed with the room. He didn't yet hear the edge. He didn't yet notice who wasn't laughing at all. After rehearsal, a second note appeared on his chair. Same typeface. Same calm tone. One new detail, front row will be present. Desi folded the note once and put it in his pocket. Then he left it there, like a weight. Because the message was clear. They didn't want his answer. They wanted his answer seen. The second warning arrived in the hallway. A man Desi had never met matched his pace without looking at him. Paperwork has a way of becoming public, the man said. His voice stayed level, like advice. They passed the call board. One crew member's name had been crossed out in red pencil. No reason beside it. Just absence. Desi slowed. The man didn't. Who decides that? Desi asked. The answer came without a face. The room does. Desi kept walking, but the hallway felt narrower. Not physically, socially. Desi noticed a grip man watching him from the corner, then pretending to adjust a cable. The pretending was the message. Someone wanted him aware, not informed. He tried to make a joke to a cameraman on the way out. The cameraman smiled, but his eyes stayed on the folder. And Desi understood the joke had missed the real audience. At the sound booth, Desi closed the door. The glass reflected more than his face. It reflected people watching him enter. He realized the booth was no longer private. And that meant the next mistake would have witnesses. After that, the studio became careful. Not quiet, careful. Phones rang without voices on the other end. When someone answered, the line stayed open long enough to make them listen to their own breathing. A rehearsal tape disappeared. It returned rewound to a pause in Desi's voice. Someone wanted him to hear his hesitation. Someone wanted him to correct it. Assistants stopped using his first name. They switched to Mr. Arnaz, like distance could protect them. Wardrobe stopped joking. Makeup stopped lingering. In the cafeteria, executives occupied tables that weren't theirs. They didn't eat. They watched exits. They watched who sat where. They watched who looked away. One brushed past Desi and said, "Don't make this awkward." The word landed heavier than a threat. Because awkward could be edited into disgrace. That afternoon, a sponsor's representative asked for a quick photo. Not with Desi, of the stage, with Desi's table clearly visible in the background. The man smiled as he took it. Then he slid the camera back into his pocket like nothing happened. Desi understood what the photo was for. A caption would be written later. A writer tried to warn him in a whisper. "They're not trying to scare you," the writer said. "They're trying to make you look unstable." Desi didn't answer. Answering would sound defensive. He just kept walking, and the hallway felt like it had fewer doors than yesterday. At rehearsal, a joke landed early, before the punch line. The audience laughed anyway. Then they stopped as if someone had signaled them. Desi realized the laugh had timing. Not comedic timing, control timing. A fresh memo appeared on the bulletin board about standards and tone. It didn't name Desi. It didn't need to. 3 crew members read it, then walked away like they hadn't. Later, a chair on the set was moved 2 inches closer to the table. No one claimed they did it, but the camera angle now forced Desi to face the front row longer. And that meant the room would get a better look at him. Even joking had become evidence. And that meant the room could turn whenever it wanted. Someone close to Desi found him near the props. The door was left open on purpose, like privacy was no longer permitted. "They can still make this clean," she said. "If you sign, they'll say it was mutual." Desi didn't answer. He watched a stagehand walk past the doorway and not look in. "If you don't," she continued, "they'll make you the problem. They'll make you the story." Walking away was still possible. A new contract, a new city, a quiet life. She leaned in. "Say yes once," she whispered, "then we leave on our terms." Desi shook his head once. Not defiance. Decision. "If you refuse again," she said, "they'll do it in front of everyone." Desi answered, "Good." Her eyes tightened. Then she nodded, slow, like she understood what he was risking. Outside the room, footsteps passed and did not stop. That was the last exit. Because after tonight, the room would remember which way he turned. The invitation arrived the next morning on letterhead. Studio C. Mandatory attendance. The room was wrong the moment Desi entered. Too bright over the table. Too dim over the seats. Executives filled the front rows. Sponsors sat beside them, already aligned. A union observer sat near the aisle and pretended to study the ceiling. Security stood facing inward. The exits felt narrower than usual. 1 chair waited for Desi. 2 waited opposite him. The imbalance wasn't accidental. Desi sat anyway. Refusing would look like panic. Accepting meant he was agreeing to be watched. He noticed the microphone stand at the edge of the table. Unplugged. A warning in plain sight, recording was optional, and silence was chosen. A glass of water waited at his place, already sweating. No one asked if he wanted it. It was there to keep his hands busy if they started to shake. Across from him, the second chair remained empty, pushed back like an insult. An empty chair is still a statement in Hollywood. It says, "You are alone, and everyone can see it." The folder waited in front of him, already open. As if his arrival had been rehearsed. As if the next 30 seconds had been approved by someone he would never meet. In the back rows, a few crew members stood with their hands clasped. They weren't there to work. They were there to remember. The lawyer didn't greet him. He pushed the folder forward with 2 fingers. An uncapped pen followed, placed carefully beside the signature line. Ink ready, time ready. The audience laughed. Short, controlled. Desi assumed the laugh belonged to the timing. He was wrong. The laugh was permission. And permission could be removed. 1 laugh cut off mid-syllable. Another continued a beat too long. The room corrected itself like it had practiced. The lawyer let the laughter settle, then die. Silence replaced it too quickly. A guard shifted near the door, blocking nothing, suggesting everything. The pen tapped once. Soft, final. Desi felt the room lean in. He was late to understanding, but not too late. He saw the trap, laugh, then silence, then paper. A public squeeze with no private exit. And if he reached for the pen too fast, it would look like surrender. If he refused too fast, it would look like panic. Either choice could be used. That was the design. Desi didn't reach for the pen. He didn't announce refusal. He turned the contract sideways so the front rows could see it. No explanation. Just exposure. He pointed to the signature line, then to the seats behind the lawyer. "If this is public," he said, "then let it be fully public." A ripple moved through the room. Not anger. Calculation. Desi placed his rehearsal script on top of the contract, covering the signature. He made the demand wait beneath the story. Then he did the unexpected thing. He said nothing else. He waited. His stillness forced everyone else to own their movement. And the room began to notice who looked away first. A sponsor's representative reached for a pen of his own, then stopped. He set it down as if it had burned him. That small movement told Desi everything. Silence stretched. No one moved. The lawyer glanced at the executives. They didn't respond. They were watching the watchers. A sponsor shifted, then froze when he realized movement had become visible. The pen remained uncapped, drying. A countdown without numbers. Desi stayed still. He let the room feel its own discomfort. He let them realize they had built a stage and invited witnesses. For the first time, attention shifted away from Desi, toward the people who had planned the moment. That shift felt small. It wasn't. The balance tilted without noise, and everyone understood it could still swing back. If the lawyer spoke now, the room would remember his words. If Desi spoke now, the room would repeat them forever. So both sides stayed quiet, and quiet became the argument. In the back row, someone started to clap out of habit, then stop. The stopped clap said more than applause could. It meant the room was waiting for permission to feel, and permission was the only thing no one could sign. The lawyer capped the pen. The click landed like relief. He slid the contract back into the folder. Not withdrawn. Returned. No apology followed. Only a small nod that acknowledged the method. Not kindness, recognition. Desi closed the folder without opening it. He set it aside. He didn't touch the pen. Security eased away from the doors. The room exhaled without realizing it had been holding breath. The humiliation didn't happen. But the threat didn't apologize for trying. It didn't need to. It had learned what Desi would do with witnesses. The story spread quickly and incorrectly. Some said Desi refused to sign and the lawyer's hand shook. Others said Desi demanded names and the executives went pale. Some told it as a comedy that turned cold. They remembered the laughter. They remembered how fast it died. They remembered the moment the room realized it had gone too far. No one agreed on details. They agreed on the feeling. A room full of witnesses. A pen waiting like a trap. And Desi making the trap visible. Crew members retold it in barber chairs and parking lots. They lowered their voices even when no one was nearby, because the point of the story was that listening had consequences. Executives denied it with smiles that arrived too late. They called it a misunderstanding, because misunderstanding sounded harmless. But the room knew the difference between harmless and controlled. People lowered their voices when they told it, as if the room could still hear them, as if paper could still be slid forward 1 inch at a time. In time, the story became a warning, not about contracts, about rooms. This moment mattered because it changed what could be demanded quietly. Desi didn't destroy the system. He made it hesitate. Old Hollywood relied on private pressure. Desi moved the pressure into the light and held it there. He didn't win with force. He won with witnesses. In a town built on quiet humiliation, he made silence visible. And that was enough.